12 incredibly underrated Canadian monster movies that deserve more recognition and love. Given a rich history in the horror genre with celebrated names like the late Bob Clark to the veteran David Cronenberg, Canada's wide-ranging cinematic collection includes many hidden gems. Speaking of creature features, there is no denying that Canada does boast a bountiful heritage of some of the most undervalued monster movies that are definitely worth looking out for. In this video, we're going to talk about 12 of the most underrated Canadian monster movies you may have never seen, but you totally should. Before we go into our list, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin. The Void, 2016. Deputy Sheriff Daniel comes across a man drenched in blood dragging along the side of a road. He takes him to the Marsh County Memorial Hospital, a nearby local infirmary, one where his separated wife works as a nurse along with a skeleton crew and very limited resources. Soon, a group of mysterious hooded cultists start gathering outside the hospital, slowly encircling the building and ultimately driving the patients and staff inside voraciously insane. Stephen Kosinski and Jeremy Gillespie's The Void is a magnificent take on Lovecraftian horror. It would not be entirely wrong to say that this 2016 supernatural horror film is truly one of the best adaptations of the cosmic horror that we have had on display. With a running time of 90 minutes, the pacing of the movie is kept deliberately slow compared to other horror flicks, but then again, it is intriguing enough to cement you. And you know the best part, hardly anything in the film has CGI. All of the monsters along with the gore featured are physical products that were formed by a team that not only respects the genre, but also desires to bring it back to its roots.
Come, join me.
The creature on display here, mind you, looks absolutely petrifying. Imagine a 4-footed, zombie-like beast covered in diseased, necrotic flesh and tentacles. But having said that, it is also not a flick that will make you jump in your seat. Instead, the flick will make you experience a hellish nightmare, one that just does not want to end. This little throwback to old-school horror is definitely going to leave you spooked for days to come. And while the ending won't answer all your questions, you owe it to yourself to watch this masterpiece. The Gate, 1987. Two young boys inadvertently set free a bunch of notorious pint-sized demons from a mysterious hole in their suburban backyard. What follows next is an epic battle between good and evil as the children struggle very hard to not only save their lives but also close the gateway to hell. Tibor Takic's supernatural horror film happens to be an 80s staple to this very day and simply needs no introduction. After all, it didn't take much time to acquire a massive cult following since its release back in 1987. Credits to the special effects that the film boasted, they were simply terrific. Remember the scene where the construction worker's corpse breaks into dozens of tiny demons? The film is quite a graphical treat, especially with images that are bound to stick with you. Here's an interesting piece of trivia that we think many of you might not know. The little demons were actually portrayed by actors donning rubber suits and shot using the forced perspective technique. It goes without saying that the film does provide some solid scares, a great atmosphere, and an even better direction. So if you are someone who fancies cheesy creature features and haven't seen The Gate yet, do us a favor and keep this classic alive by watching it.
I'm not dying!
Ginger Snaps, 2000. The morbid Fitzgerald sisters, Bridget and Ginger, have always been obsessed about all things dead. As children, the duo even made a pact to die together when they turned 16.
Out by 16 or dead in the scene, but together forever.
But things head towards a whole new direction the night Ginger begins menstruating for the first time and gets bitten by a werewolf. It goes without saying that the sisters get a hell of a lot more than what they had initially bargained for.
Fucking hilarious, cave boy.
Directed by John Fawcett and produced by Steve Hoban, this horror flick became the 5th highest-earning Canadian movie back in 2001. With a runtime of 108 minutes, the audience gets plunged into the melancholic world of the Fitzgerald sisters right from the opening scene. It is the convincing psychology of the flick that makes it openly terrifying alongside solid visuals. Catherine Isabelle literally had to spend at least 7 hours in the makeup chair to create Ginger's transformation and an extra 2 hours just to get rid of all the makeup. As for the werewolf on display, Fawcett had a stuntman don a werewolf suit whenever a scene called for it, and credits to Paul Jones, who led the film's special effects team, for doing a spectacular job here, especially with the design of the wolf. Mind you, Ginger Snaps is not for the faint of heart, yet conclusively happens to be one of the best werewolf flicks ever made. Don't miss out on this gem here if you get a chance. The Monster, 2016. While driving her daughter to her ex's house on a rainy night, Kathy hits a wolf on the way. This not only breaks her car, but also leaves them stranded right in the middle of the road. After examining the injuries on the wolf, the duo finds a large tooth embedded within the carcass and realizes it looks more like the victim of an animal attack. Eventually, they encounter the monstrous creature hidden within the darkness of the woods that does not want them to leave. Brian Bertino's The Monster is an atmospheric, tense, low-budget horror flick that delivers first-class acting by Zoe Kazan and Ella Ballantine. Bertino's script does an amazing job of creating a very nice dark setting along with Julie Kirkwood's cinematography. Speaking of the monster on display, it does full justice to the title of the movie. You get a dreadful-looking behemoth here, one that appears like a large reptile with black, scaly skin, needle-sharp teeth, deadly claws, and a creepy pair of blank white eyes. This vicious, destructive creature simply loves to kill. Be it humans or animals, it just loves to dig its teeth in all things fleshy. For those of you who are not aware, the monster was actually portrayed by popular stuntman and actor Chris Webb, and we have got to admit that he did a great job. Just take out 91 minutes from your busy schedule and give this 2016 American-Canadian venture a shot. It deserves more recognition and love than its limited release provided.
Show yourself!
Wolfcop, 2014. Lowell Dean's superhero horror comedy revolves around Lou Garau, an alcoholic cop in the small neighborhood of Woodhaven. It's during one of his investigations when Garau gets knocked out and wakes up the following morning not having any recollection of the previous night. Upon discovering that he has a pentagram carved into his stomach, it does not take him much time to realize that not only has he been cursed, but he is also in the process of transforming into a werewolf. However, as he retains his human intelligence in his wolf form, Garau continues to work as a police officer. This 2014 flick here is hilarious, gory, and downright clever thanks to Dean's script. It is witty, particularly campy, and you're going to love the protagonist here. Leo Fafard as the wolf cop literally breathes life to his character. Boasting a running time of 79 minutes, we're glad that this movie doesn't push the narrative further than it needs to. One of the selling points of Wolfcop happens to be the fact that it knows it's cheesy and happily embraces it. It also has one of the most unforgettable werewolf transformations on display. Unlike other regular movies, the transformation scene here is quite unique, with skin shedding off. Brownie points to the energetic musical score by Shooting Guns, along with the boosted sound effects that simply worked in the favor of the flick here. Do not miss out on this one if you get the opportunity. The Shrine, 2010. Wanting to probe deeper into the disappearance of tourists in the Polish village of Alvania, a group of journalists travel all the way to the remote community in the hopes of getting a fascinating story. However, they end up unraveling the secrets of the mysterious village and bump into something much more sinister than they could have ever imagined. Not only are they chased by the intimidating and hostile locals, they even become the subsequent victims of the ritualistic human sacrifice. John Knotz's The Shrine provides a convincing plotline that sets up the mood and builds up the suspense. To all the viewers getting confused in between, don't worry, everything will make sense to you eventually. Credits to Knotts along with Brendan Moore and Trevor Matthews for coming up with a story that is in every way innovative and engaging. They have also avoided depending on CGI, instead utilizing elements of psychology and suspense to do the trick. You also have a splendid work of cinematography here by James Griffith, along with Ryan Shore's musical score. The latter was actually nominated for the 2012 Grammy Award for Best Soundtrack. Topped with a great amount of gore, we urge you all to watch this movie with an open mind.
You give me my bike! My aunt will call the police on you!
The Pit, 1981. 12-year-old Jamie Benjamin is an oddball who is bullied by his classmates, ridiculed by his neighbors, and often ignored by his parents. He only finds solace speaking to his stuffed teddy bear with whom he regularly talks. However, after discovering a pit in the middle of the forest filled with carnivorous creatures, Jamie starts feeding the monsters people he feels has mistreated him. Lou Lehman's The Pit, also known as Teddy, is the true definition of a cult classic. The character of Jamie is exceedingly creepy and brilliantly essayed by Sammy Snyders. Lehman was smart enough to have on display the child's abuse and how he was always treated like an outcast. We also have unsettling scenes like him talking to his teddy and his teddy talking back.
She's not like the others, Teddy. She's pretty.
Boasting an interesting concept with decent performances and 4 big, hairy, prehistoric monsters who seem to be forever hungry, the movie does a pretty good job at being scary. Horror hounds are going to love the creepy atmosphere along with that sleazy nightmare vibe. Even the special effects on display have that nostalgic 80s feel to it. It is highly satisfactory and so well made. Definitely check this out for the twisted ending. It is bound to blow your mind. Jack Brooks, Monster Slayer, 2007. As a kid, Jack Brooks watched his entire family get viciously butchered by a demonic beast. Years later, he's a plumber who is still grieving and occasionally suffers from anger issues where he blames himself for not being able to do anything back then. He attends therapy sessions which have not been fruitful to him and has made himself a part of night classes to keep himself attentive and occupied. However, things take a different turn when his science professor accidentally releases an ancient horde of evil creatures. With evil spreading like wildfire, Jack makes use of his bottled-up emotions to confront old demons along with some new ones and finally avenge his family. Produced by Brook Street Pictures and directed by John Knotts, this 2007 horror comedy is a pretty slick, old-school gore fest, one that is extremely well executed. We have the veteran Robert Englund here playing the character of Professor Gordon Crowley. While the movie is Knotts' first feature, it was not easy to get Englund on board. It was only after watching Still Life, one of the short films of Brook Street Pictures, that Englund was convinced enough to take the part of the professor.
What the heck happened last night?
With no CGI being used for any of the effects, Monster Slayer boasts a ton of creative prosthetics. Remember the professorial monster on display towards the end? Well, it took at least 6 to 8 people to operate at one time. Give Jack Brooks' Monster Slayer a definite shot. If you try not to take it seriously, you are in for a fun ride. Splice, 2009. Clive Nicolai and Elsa Cost are genetic engineers who hope to become famous by splicing animal DNA and coming up with hybrids. They eventually create a viable prepubescent female creature whom they name Dren. Dren grows up pretty fast, showing remarkable intelligence.
Nerd.
However, on entering adolescence, Dren starts revealing dangerous traits, and the couple soon realizes that they have a serious and rather deadly problem to take care of.
It's hard to control.
Vincenzo Natali's Splice is one of the most exceptional horror flicks that Canada is pretty proud of, and also the highest-earning English-Canadian movie of 2010. To those of you who are wondering how Natali got the idea for this film, well, credits to an image of a mouse with a human ear on its back that inspired Vincenzo to go ahead with this project. Would you believe us if we told you that special effects designers Howard Berger and Greg Nicotero actually created 11 varied versions of Dren?
We love you.
The highlight of Splice inevitably happens to be the creature on display. The featured effects are truly impressive, and it goes without saying that a great deal of care and detail went into creating them, as well as the makeup used on actress Chaniak. Besides the disturbing aesthetic, the movie is backed by a fearless story, all thanks to Vincenzo and Antoinette Terry Bryant. There is nothing not to love about the understated yet well-played references to the bitter childhood experiences, psychoses, and changing roles of parents. It is not just another sci-fi horror film, it is way beyond that. The Incubus, 1982. A mysterious figure has been terrorizing a small Wisconsin town, violently raping young women and murdering men. Dr. Sam Cordell, the local surgeon there, decides to take things in his own hands after a series of unfathomable and bizarre assaults leave everyone clueless.
It was on the kid's neck. It's one hell of a large hand.
Based on the 1976 novel of the same name by Ray Russell, this 1982 supernatural slasher flick, directed by John Hugh and written by George Franklin, was initially supposed to be directed by David Cronenberg. But we are happy anyway with the outcome. Not only do you get to witness an unconventional, spooky climatic twist here, you are also bound to question yourself. The movie is filled with scenes that are not only intense, but also quite gory. Mind you, it is definitely not for the woozy and the queasy. We are highly stressing on the library assault scene. Hugh's direction, along with Albert J. Dunk's cinematography, perfectly create this foreboding atmosphere of dread, one that is prevalent throughout the running time of 93 minutes.
We can sell a few more papers.
Just doing my job.
The monster makeup is surprisingly scary even by today's standards. He looks absolutely vicious. However, contrary to what the title may imply, the demon only gets 10 seconds of screen time. We believe The Incubus is a forgotten horror classic that needs to be remembered and relived. Please don't hesitate to watch this. End of the Line, 2007. Karen happens to be a young psychiatric nurse who boards the last subway train of the night. However, the train stops in the middle of the tunnel and she finds herself trapped along with a few other late-night passengers. Very soon, it dawns upon her that she has to fight for her life against the murderous extremist of a Christian doomsday cult. As the people around her begin to die one by one, Karen and the remaining survivors have to make it through the night. This 2007 horror flick, written, directed, and produced by Maurice Devereaux, not only boasts an original narrative, but is also quite imaginative. It is a real low-budget treat entirely financed by Devereaux. The whole idea of a ride home turning into a fight for survival works in favor of the story here. The movie has on display religious fanatics owning razor-sharp crucifixes and doing their best to save the non-believers by sending them to the Almighty. It is particularly very hard to disregard the disturbing vision of the Armageddon cults and the monsters they worship. It goes without saying that End of the Line is extremely gory and chock full of graphic violence. Special mention to Martin Gautier's background score that is bound to strike a chord with you. Also, credits to the location. The dimly lit abandoned tunnels will give you that sense of claustrophobia, upping the element of terror to a whole new level. Manborg, 2011. Directed, produced, and co-written by Steven Kostinsky, this sci-fi action flick revolves around a soldier who, while fighting Nazi vampires, dies, only to get resurrected years later as Manborg, a deadly hybrid between flesh and metal. He, along with a handful of misfit fighters, join together to put an end to the oppressive regime of the Bloodsuckers. One has every reason to be shocked when they learn that the movie was actually shot in a garage. Yet despite its shoestring budget, it's hard to find a single dull moment. In fact, Manborg will literally drive you to the edge of your seat with its action. It's a sure-shot ode to the 80s brilliance. We are stressing on the amazing stop animation technique used here. Everything from the design of the demons to the variety of the creatures on display, it is absolutely phenomenal.
Behind.
There might be times when you think that you are inside a video game. After all, the visual design of the movie is simply marvelous. Full credits to Kosinski for styling this whole flick to perfection. Unlike other desperate cult movies that try to be funny, Manborg is genuinely hilarious. The dialogue will have you laughing in splits. It would not be entirely wrong to say that Manborg pays tribute to a lot of films like Hellboy, Star Wars, Spaceballs, RoboCop, and Blade amongst many. But a word of caution here, it is not meant to be taken seriously. Watch this without any expectations and you will love it.
This is all the time we had for today's episode. We hope you guys liked it. It would be awesome if you guys can take some time to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tell us which topic you want us to cover in the comment section. Have a fantastic day ahead and stay safe.
Think they'll notice?
Give me a